We are reading from the Yogasutras, and this is our online class number 28. We are studying the second chapter, aphorism number 28 onwards, the Yogasutras. So far, that is from the beginning of this book, we have learned a lot about the samadhis, then obstructions on the way to the samadhis, and many things. But now we will enter the realm of real practice. We will go into that fascinating narration of the practical do's and don'ts of yogic sadhana. Let us read the introductory aphorism to this new field, and that is the real world. Yoganga anushthanad ashuddhikshaye jnanadiptir aviveka khyate. Anushtanat, by the practice of Yoganga, the 8 different parts or limbs of yoga. Asuddhikshaye means when the impurities are destroyed. Jnana diptihi, the knowledge becomes effulgent. Aviveka khyate, up to the end of the use of discernment or differentiation between the seen objects and the seer of those objects, between the subject and the object, so to say. Viveka khyatihi, or the wisdom arising out of discernment, is gradually gained from the continuous practices of the yogangas, the 8-fold disciplines. They are called the yogangas. Anga means limbs. A question can be asked: what is the connection or what is the relation between doing the actions prescribed by yoga and the shining of knowledge, jnana diptihi? Because knowledge is something that happens in the mind. Knowledge happens. Action is something that is done by the body and mind. So what is the relation or connection between the happening of something and the doing of something? In answer to this question, the Yogasutras says, a serious practice of the 8-fold disciplines slowly removes the impurities of one's mind. And then the knowledge of the impermanence of the objects and the permanence of the seer self becomes more and more prominent. So what we do that helps us to clean the mind on which this knowledge happens. And this is meant by the word jnana diptihi, the shining forth of knowledge. In this respect, the narration seems to agree with the non-dual practices. Actually, it does. But the Yogasutras realization happens to an individual soul which does not lose its individuality into Brahman or the conscious reality. It retains its individuality. Rather, it becomes a free individual which remains so, free and individual, eternally being separate as an individual free soul. And he is counted as one such among zillions of free souls. The thing is that we are overpowered by the kleshas, the painful obstructions to yoga. And we have seen those kleshas are 5. We have read in the 3rd aphorism of this 2nd chapter itself. Avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhiniveshaha, panchakleshaha. Ignorance, avidya, egoism, asmita. Then raga means attraction, attachment. Dvesha, aversion, detachment. And abhinivesha, clinging to life or fear of death. These are called the pain-bearing obstructions or obstacles in the path of achieving yoga. They are to be removed by the practice of Kriya Yoga. Tapaswadhyaya Ishvara Pranidhanani Kriya Yoga. That was the first aphorism in the 2nd chapter. And we are following that aphorism in the practical field. The implication of this current aphorism, that is aphorism number 28 here of the 2nd chapter that we are reading now, is even if these kleshas or obstructions are there in us, still the theoretical understanding of viveka jnanam or knowledge from the practice of discernment theoretically will be possible. Theoretically, intellectually we will know that they are different, because we will be using the theoretical discernment and the reasoning using our inference as taught by the scriptures. The inferences will help us to understand things theoretically. Like suppose we see there is smoke on the hill. So it can be easily inferred that there is fire on the hill. Even though we cannot see the fire, we know that there is fire because we see the indicator, the smoke. Because we have seen smoke and fire, they go together. Now see, this is a kind of discrimination or kind of discernment or reasoning that we use by inference. We don't see the fire, but we know theoretically that the fire is there. Our knowledge is theoretical here because we are not seeing the fire. We are seeing the smoke which is connected with fire, but not fire. So that is not a practical experience, but a theoretical inference, not experience. So here the manifestation of knowledge or the jnana deeptihi is the whole process of achieving this jnanam through the practice of the yogangas, the eightfold limb of the yogas. So if we want to see the fire face to face and have an experience of it directly, not through inference, then we have to walk up to the mountain and see the fire by ourselves. This walking, this practice is necessary to make it our own and not to understand it through inference theoretically. The manifestation of knowledge, that is jnana deeptihi, happens gradually because it is a part of a process that manifests the knowledge more and more in course of our practice. The closer we go to a source of light, what happens? the light becomes brighter and brighter to us. So it manifests more and more, and it will illuminate us more and more. So that is the idea. So whole process of going to that light is called Jnana Deeptihi. It does not happen immediately. We know the fact that our attachment to material objects, this brings suffering. We know that. Still we grow attachment to those objects, even though theoretically we know. By inference we know, by seeing that others are suffering, but still we grow attachment to those objects. This association with the objects brings material knowledge. On the other hand, the association with material objects with discernment brings detachment and purification of the mind. Association is there, but with detachment. And when the mind becomes gradually cleaner, purer and purer, it manifests spiritual knowledge, which is called Jnana Deeptihi. In the next aphorism, the number of the limbs of yoga are being accounted for or ascertained or maybe determined. Sometimes in different scriptures, there are mentions or references of 6 limbs of yoga. But we are talking about 8 limbs here, Ashtanga Yoga. The Yogasutras is explaining that the number is actually 8. And those 6 are included in these 8 limbs. What are those 8 limbs? All of us, most of us perhaps know this one because it is very famous. Yama niyama asana pranayama pratyahara dharana dhyanam, dhyana and samadhi, ashto angani. Yogasutras says, Yama niyama asana pranayama pratyahara dharana dhyanam and samadhi. These are the 8 limbs of yoga. Yama means moral disciplines. That is a list of self-restraint, like the don'ts. That is, don't do these. That is what is called yama. What we should not do. Niyama, a list of observances, rules, like do this, do's. So yama is don'ts, niyama is do's. Yama is self-restraint or discipline, niyama is observances or rules. Asana, physical postures and all their aids, like on a seat, like the seat also is called asana, on which you will sit. Then pranayama is breathing techniques. They are aimed at controlling the vital forces in the body. Pratyahara means withdrawal of our sense organs, and it is called vairagya actually, detachment. Dharana means concentration, contemplation, or what we call abhyasa or habits. Dhyana, everyone knows, meditation or absorption. Absorption in the object of our meditation. And samadhi is, there is a word in English, not very interesting because that is not an exact translation, but still I will use it. They call it enlightenment. Samadhi. Samadhi actually the definition of samadhi in Sanskrit is samyak adhiyate iti asmin samadhi. Samyak adhiyate. When we become completely absorbed in something, then that is called samadhi. And when we are not completely absorbed, but there would be some breaks now and then, vichidya, like that, the scriptures say, breaking. That is called dhyanam, meditation. So this difference we have to remember. So now, what are these yamas, niyamas, and means we have to know them in detail. What are these things? We said that the first limb is called yama. What is yama, or what are these yamas? So Patanjali says, ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, yamaha. Ahimsa means the don'ts of morality or yamas are ahimsa, that is non-violence or non-injury, harmlessness, all these things are called ahimsa. Satya is truthfulness. Asteya is non-stealing, not cheating. Brahmacharya is continence. And aparigraha is not receiving anything without need. Keeping things wantonly, without our need. Just hoarding things without any need. This is called aparigraha. Parigraha, that is called parigraha. Aparigraha means you don't hoard or you do not keep things which you generally don't need. We have to remember that neither Patanjali nor the divine commentator Vyasa would like to say that these are to be taken up in their extreme or absolute forms. No scriptures, for that matter, would do that. Scriptures speak to the practitioners directly, to the practitioners. They do not need to speak to the realized ones, means those who have reached the ultimate of these disciplines. You see, ultimate is the word used by Vedanta very meaningfully. Ultimate goal means the last of many goals at different levels of our spiritual progress. Spiritual instructions are very life-oriented, practical. That is why they do not speak in absolute terms, extreme terms. They are not extremists. They are like, these goals are like milestones on our way to keep us informed about our progress, how far we have come. Hence, when we explain scriptures, we need to come down to our level and explain the ultimate expressions, making them compatible to the practices, down-to-earth practices. If the teachings have nothing to mean but only the ultimate form of anything, then they are not practical. There will be no meaning in sadhana or spiritual practices then. Swami Vivekananda gave a famous 2-part lecture titled Practical Vedanta in London on November 10, 1896. He says, and I quote, "I have been asked to say something about the practical position of Vedanta philosophy. As I have told you, theory is very good indeed, but how are we to carry it into practice? How are we to carry it into practice? Theory is all right, fine. If it be absolutely impracticable, no theory is of any value whatever, except as intellectual gymnastics. Look at the harsh words used by none other than Swami Vivekananda. The Vedanta, therefore, as a religion, must be intensely practical. We must be able to carry it out in every part of our lives. And not only this, the fictitious differentiation between religion and the life of the world must vanish. For the Vedanta teaches oneness, one life throughout. You see how we all use this word practical for things we like or can do. Therefore, I will ask you to understand that Vedanta, though it is intensely practical, is always so in the sense of the ideal. It does not preach an impossible ideal, however high it be, and it is high enough for an ideal already. So you see, even Shankaracharya himself did not speak of Vedanta in absolute terms. He established 4 seats of Vedanta learning and practice in 4 corners of India. There he installed both Shiva and Shakti images for daily ritualistic worship, dualistic worship. To a senior person, Shankaracharya says, it is that famous composition. He says, "There is not much time left in your life, my dear. So instead of learning Sanskrit grammar, which is nothing but a foolish act, please chant the name of Govinda. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudha Mate." We will see the same thing here also in the Yogasutras. We will look at these do's and don'ts in detail and see how they explain these things in terms which are very down to earth. In respect of ahimsa, actually both yama and niyama are complementary to each other. The disciplines and the rules, they are complementary to each other. One cannot practice them independent of another. Among these 5 moral disciplines of yama, ahimsa is the first, non-injury. Ahimsa is also the main guiding principle in all the other 4 yama disciplines and the 5 niyama rules. Ahimsa is generally translated as non-violence. It also means non-injury, non-killing, even selfishness is called. Selflessness is called ahimsa. Even not hating others also is called ahimsa. We are all familiar with this word because of Mahatma Gandhi, the world over. Both the Yogasutras and Gandhiji meant something more than this interpretation. Of course, in today's context, it is a great virtue if we do not do any violence to others. This itself is a good virtue. We do not need to practice any love or anything, just practice ahimsa. That itself is a great virtue. At least that is a great contribution to the society and also to general peace. But yoga implies more than that. It includes the opposite of himsa or violence itself. What is the opposite of himsa or violence? Non-violence? No. Non-violence is desisting from himsa. It's not doing himsa. Not doing anything is not actually a very great virtue. The great virtue is doing something which is opposite to something negative. And the opposite of violence is love, compassion, empathy. These are called opposite of violence. These are virtues, positive virtues. And this love should be extended to all living beings and the environment. And most importantly, at a developed stage, it should include our enemies also. Love to one's own enemies. Yoga says that if we are not able to come out of selfishness regarding physical or mental things, we cannot practice non-violence. Himsa or violence or injury includes our own degraded and mean tendencies like scaring others for selfish purpose, using harsh words to those who are less likely to hit back, teasing others to hurt them, showing irritation to others' behavior or habits, even putting ourselves into the judge's seat to criticize others. These are other names of himsa, injury. Actually, as I said, ahimsa is the target to achieve which all the other 4 disciplines of yama and 5 principles of niyama should be practiced. The main target is ahimsa. That is how the Yoga Sutra explains it. In the commentary to aphorism number 2.15, means 15th aphorism of this chapter, of this second chapter, Bhagavan Vyasa has raised some nagging questions and answered them shortly. He poses this question: Anupahatya bhutani. Anupahatya bhutani upabhogaha na sambhavati. Anupahatya, without injuring living beings, our life is not possible in this earth. So it is clear that there is no way to live without killing life. Na sambhavati, not possible, Vyasa says. Then he has said that there are differences in the acts and motives of killing itself. Like there are differences between killing or injuring a benefactor or a host and killing or injuring an attacker. Then there are differences between injuring a human being and injuring an animal. Differences between injuring an animal and a pine tree. Differences between injuring a pine tree and a bunch of grass. And so on and so forth. Differences are there. Again, here there are direct and indirect injuries, like differences between killing animals directly or indirectly. Indirectly means an act like how cruelly we use animals to develop our own medicines. We may be vegans, vegetarians, it does not matter. Using shoes made of leather, using clothes made of silk that caused killing of millions of silkworms, and so on and so forth. These are indirect himsa. That would be a mind-boggling and complicated analysis if we continue further. Killing and non-killing. are also dependent on profession, Vyasa says, species, time and space, which is mentioned in the next aphorism. That is why Sri Krishna did not specify any names of food that have to be avoided. Rather, he validated the classifications of human beings on the line of their tendencies being influenced by the three gunas: Sattva guna, Rajo guna and Tama guna. Hence the devotees, the austerities, tapas, the intellect, buddhi, the ways of acting, the actors, the works, the patience, dhriti, and so many other things are classified by him, by Sri Krishna, as having sattvika, rajasika and tamasika propensities or tendencies. Sri Krishna's stress was not to spend useless time criticizing others, but to practice ahimsa by not doing himsa. That is called a vrata, virtue. Vrata means virtue. And Mahavrata, or the greatest virtue, is there. Criticizing others for no spiritual gain to myself is another name of himsa or injury. Injury to my own yoga practices in particular and to others in general. And above all, who gives us the right to criticize others? Why not take care of our own business, your own spiritual life for God realization? Jesus Christ asked, "Did you not know that I must be busy with my Father's business, with God?" The main and of course the ultimate purpose of practicing ahimsa and all other 9 supportive virtues under yama and niyama is yoga, samadhi, that is called liberation. Main purpose. Since it is not possible to maintain the physical body and also to live without injuring life, the yogis practice yoga so that they do not have to come back to such a life at all hereafter. They need liberation from such problematic life. This is one of the reasons why people practice yoga, because of gaining liberation to go out of this vicious circle. Another reason, of course, in the context of injury or himsa, is that we want to get out of our own suffering and also not to be the cause of others' suffering any further. This is one of the practices of ahimsa. You know, many of these limbs of yoga are to be practiced so that one can expiate or make good the injuries that one has to do or cannot avoid to do for living one's own life on earth. Like the Manusmriti says, it is unavoidable that when one walks on the road or even inside the house, one would unknowingly kill insects and worms. Then ahimsa in its extreme form would mean one has to stop walking, eating, breathing, etc. But that is not possible. Na sambhavati, Vyasa says, and you know it. Then you cannot say that you are doing it unknowingly. You know it. But you know that it cannot be avoided. Hence the expression for this is you are doing it unavoidably or being helpless. That is why one, particularly those who take up yoga, Manu and others say, has to practice at least 6 rounds of pranayama in a day to get rid of such unavoidable killings and injuries to others. The lawgivers say that in this way. In essence, we can say that the instruction is meant for inculcating or practicing the spirit of ahimsa, or non-injury, at least in one's own mind. Mental purification is the purpose of all yoga practices, including the practice of ahimsa. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha, that we have learned. Yoga means purifying the mind of the impurities called the contrary vrittis or thoughts. That much is about ahimsa. Then we move to the next one called satyam. Satyam. Satyam means truthfulness. Vyasa says satyam or truthfulness means Satyam yatha arthe vak manase. He says that Satyam means to practice unity between the speech and the mind. Sri Ramakrishna says, Mon muk ek koro. The same meaning. What you are saying loudly should be exactly what you know. And of course, nothing more, and at the same time nothing less. That is, nothing held back to distort the meaning. But there are two ways to compromise truth. It is allowed. One way is for the benefit of others, even at your own cost. Even not compromising that to defend yourself. Not compromising this. And for one's own selfish interest, truth can be compromised. The first one, that is compromising truth for the benefit of others, is a virtue. This is one of the practical application of the virtue called truthfulness, satyam. It is an aid to the practice of the first virtue, ahimsa, also. But to hate those who do not practice truthfulness is a form of himsa or mental himsa for the person who hates. Thus they say, hate the sin, not the sinner. During the time of Christ, some people brought a woman to Jesus. They said that the woman committed sin. She should be stoned to death. Jesus did not oppose their judgment. He simply asked, that may be okay, but let the one who has never committed sin in life throw the first stone. Alas, a primitive society did not change so far. That is the practice even today. There is an indirect way to practice truthfulness. Many of us are very and sometimes very, very, very talkative. This habit shows that we do not know where to stop, how to stop, and why to stop. So we go on talking and talking. That means what we talk would be mostly nonsense and also mostly exaggerated or inferred, imagined untruth. This is a kind of himsa, injury, not only to the listeners but to one's own divine self inside. Therefore, the yogis advise us to practice talking less. Even some would advise us to practice maunam, silence, meaning desisting from talking as a vow for some time. There was a funny incident. One of our senior Swamis told one junior Swami, "You fellow make me talk too much. So, from tomorrow I will not talk with you for a week." Then this young fellow, always as it is like with young people, said, "After that, what will you do?" Then the senior Swamiji said, "I may extend that time." So if we take it as a vow, then it will indirectly help us practice truthfulness and non-injury. One should also stop thinking of unreal things, fantastic or magical outcomes, etc., etc. So this is how Satyam or truthfulness is practiced. And number 3, in the Yama family, Asteya. Asteya means non-stealing. Steya or stealing means to take a thing, to accept a thing that is not rightfully given or rightfully owned or inherited. At the same time, it also means to use others' ideas in one's own name. This is called plagiarism, you know all that. The Isha Upanishad says, Magrudha kasyasvid dhanam. It says even to use things that are created by God without being grateful to Him or without acknowledging God's contribution in our life would be called stealing. Ye bhungte stena evasa. Sri Krishna says those who enjoy this world without acknowledging God's contribution, they are called stenas, thieves. Then number 4 is brahmacharya. The word brahmacharya is derived from the word Brahman. Brahman means the ultimate reality without any gender. It is meant for men, women and others, for all. Those who would aspire to realize Brahman would spend more and more time, more and more energy, more and more thoughts in realizing that goal. Suppose some people are sattvika by nature. They should not choose a profession which needs rajasika or dynamic energy. They are useless in that respect. Rather, such people are not suitable for such work, we can say that. Hence, sattvika food is recommended for a person who is sattvika by nature. And still it is allowed that sattvika people also would eat even sattvika food for enjoyment. Like a sattvika person would eat butter or ghee in more quantity just to enjoy the taste. Let them eat that. What is the problem? But a yogi has to practice not only eating sattvika food, but also eating less and less. This helps in brahmacharya. Similarly, the strict rules of brahmacharya or continence are meant for the yogis who are dedicating their time, energy, etc. exclusively for self-realization. That is brahmacharya. And then aparigraha, not receiving or gathering anything without need. There are some principles to be followed by a yogi about vairagya or detachment. Detachment from objects of enjoyment. Why? because it is a suffering to work for acquiring the objects of enjoyment. That is a suffering. It is also suffering in preserving or protecting a thing. It is also a suffering when you lose a thing. It is also a suffering caused to us by the death or decay or damage of things or beings. Suffering due to the impressions, both good and bad. These events live on our mind. There is suffering. It goes on and on. And himsa or injury due to enjoyment of things, as we discussed under the virtue ahimsa. So considering these obstacles in the path of yoga, a yogi avoids such enjoyments and also uses his or her brain not to have extra things in the first place. It contradicts the main purpose of yoga if we are owner of many things and allot parts of our mind into all those possessions. The mind is torn apart and put in different parts. The life is divided into several parts and it was hidden in different places, in different things. It is like that. The law is one cannot serve two masters together. Jesus says, God and mammon, possessions, cannot go together. Now the conclusion to this yama is being drawn. So that is the verse number, aphorism number 31 in the second chapter. Ete jati desha kala samaya anavachinnaha sarva bhauma mahavratam. Ete, these practices of the virtues, jati, anavachinna, they are unbroken by desha, time, kala, place, jati, profession, rules, purposes, and then they become great vows. These practices, non-killing, truthfulness, non-stealing, chastity, non-receiving, these are to be practiced by every man, woman, child, everybody. By every soul, irrespective of nation, country or position, etc. It seems the expression Sarva Bhauma Mahavratam means universal great vows would give an idea, a wrong idea, that it is a petrified or fossilized commandment. The universality spoken here as it is not like a frozen doctrinal fatwa. No Hindu scriptures would do that. That is why it can be and should be interpreted or reinterpreted according to local implications and also humane practices at any point of time of human civilization and culture. A culture and a civilization are not closed ideas. These are dynamic truths. Hence, the great commentator Vyasa has given a beautiful clarification, which is at once modern and universal. And we have to remember, it was even way back around 500 BC that such liberal interpretations and ideas were normal for the Hindu mind. Vyasa says, let me translate it as it is from the Sanskrit. The example of non-injury is not fully appreciable to a profession, applicable to a profession like A fisherman's practice of non-injury to all does not include the fish. Because he is a fisherman, he has to kill fish. Harmless, limited to place, like practicing non-killing in holy places, which are traditionally like that, but it is not mandatory elsewhere. Non-injury limited to time, like observance of non-killing on a particular sacred day. Harmlessness might be restricted by the idea of duty. For example, Vyasa writes here, Deva Brahmana Arthe na anyatha hanishyami. That is, observance of sacrifice of animals is allowed only to propitiate certain deities or for feeding the Brahmins, and not for any other purpose. Another instance is about the Kshatriyas, the fighting class, like the soldiers in our time. They are committing violence in war as a matter of duty and practicing harmlessness at other times. These exceptions are permitted when one is taking non-injury as a vrata or a vow. Exceptions are permitted. These exceptions. A fisherman will kill the fish. A soldier has the right to kill the enemy soldiers because to save the millions behind. So these are called vratas, excepting those taken as duties in a particular time, at a particular place, for a particular profession, for a particular class, etc., etc., and for tendencies, gunas like sattva, rajas and tamo gunas. So their exceptions are allowed. But if one is able to practice yama or non-injury, truth, etc., universally, without the exceptions that are mentioned about professions now, or duty, or time, or place, that means if they are practiced wholly in every instance, that practice is called a Sarvabhauma Mahavratam, a vow which is universal at the same time great. Otherwise it is just a vratam. It is called a vow vratam when non-injury, truthfulness, etc. are practiced as far as they are allowed and practicable, depending on profession, time, duty, etc. And it is called a universal Sarvabhauma Mahavratam, great vow, when they are practiced without any exception whatsoever. Those who think like an extremist, that the concept of non-injury should be forced on all, should not have the moral right to live in human society. Actually, there will be no society at all. There will be a society of robots, similar things. The next limb or the second limb of the yoga practice is called niyamaha. It is a set of 5 rules that would help us in internal purification, as we have discussed earlier. The external purifications that are done by the yama disciplines need to be equally supported by internal cleaning or purification. Otherwise, the external efforts will not only be not effective and not sustainable, but also they would produce frustration and emptiness. The result will be a failure and end of yoga itself. So just see for a while the niyamas. Shaucha santosha tapaswadhyaya ishvara pranidhanani niyamaha. Shauchaha means internal and external purification. Santoshaha contentment, tapaha austerity, swadhyaya study, and ishvara pranidhana surrender to God. These are called the niyamas. So we have seen that these are the two, actually the preliminaries to yoga. Preliminaries to yoga means with them the real practices of yoga begins. So today I want to stop here because we have come to the end of our time. We want to now close it here. We will chant Om first and then close this. Om